Hello and welcome to the Master's Voice, the podcast series of Mediabrief.com. I'm your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and it gives me immense pleasure to invite a remarkable, truly stellar professional leader to the show. She's an electrical engineering graduate from IIT Madras and an IIM postgraduate in business, management, marketing and related support services from India's most prestigious IIM institute, the one in Ahmedabad. Also, this remarkable lady is not just amongst the most eminently qualified and experienced professionals in the Indian media, marketing and broadcast industry, but has great professional experience too across a spectacular career of close to 20 years now. I am delighted to welcome, and I have with me here, Prathyusha Agarwal of Zee Entertainment Enterprises Limited or Zee. What makes her presence on the show today doubly heartwarming is that she's on the episode that's up in the week of Women's Day that was on Sunday the 8th of March 2020. Pratyusha, welcome to the Master's Voice on Mediabrief.com.
Thanks Pavan, it's lovely to catch up with you too. You've said a lot of nice things. I hope we live up to that. Yeah.
You've done that all your professional life, haven't you? But thank you so much for your time, Pratyusha. In fact, I must share that in her Twitter profile, Prathyusha describes herself as a passionate marketer, a stay-at-work mum, and a homemaker. Oh, and CMO at Zee too. That is so like the wonderful women professionals we see and are inspired by every day. So happy Women's Day, Prathyusha.
Thank you. Happy Women's Day to you too.
Thank you. Before we begin our conversation, Prathyusha, allow me the honor to share a back-of-the-envelope profile of yours with our listeners. Close to 20 years of experience with brands like Hindustan, Lever Limited, and later when it became Unilever, with MarketGate Consulting, with Star India as a VP brand strategy, a founder director at All OK Tech Support. I guess the electrical engineer kicked in here. It was a startup venture that was for people at homes who owned tech devices but had no reliable support system to manage them. Then as a consultant at Brand Learning, Vice President Marketing and Analytics at HDFC, to Head of Marketing at the Tata Group company Tata Unistore, to finally CMO or Chief Marketing Officer at Zee. No, not finally, because Prathyusha was recently invited by the Zee leadership to take on an even bigger, more important role that I believe will be crucial to empowering the individual tentpole businesses of Zee and the great salience of the group's combined offerings. Prathyusha is now Chief Consumer Officer of the domestic broadcast business at Zee. As CMO, Prathyusha, a brilliant marketing and consumer connect leader, powered numerous successful business and CSR initiatives, including the complete brand evolution to the memorable, extraordinary together positioning of Zee. She also successfully handled important consumer-led initiatives that brought business transformation and resulted in brand and viewership growth. And in her new role, Prathyusha will be responsible for embedding a customer-first culture and thinking in all aspects of the broadcast business. So Prathyusha, congratulations on an amazing career trajectory and experience.
Thank you so much. Obviously honored and really looking forward to the journey of we were on that journey of putting the consumer at the center of everything we do. Now I think doing that at scale and making it the ZNA, as I'd like to call it, is really the journey.
Wonderful. So I already have my headline, which is the ZNA of Zee. Alright, so Prathyusha, your LinkedIn profile, however, still says you're CMO Zee. And you've done some great work as CMO for the entire group, which we'll come to shortly. But tell me, is the CMO role now a subset of your bigger responsibility as Chief Consumer Officer, domestic broadcast business? After all, marketing is also about taking the brand and what it stands for to the consumers.
Absolutely. I think, honestly, I've not had the time to change it on LinkedIn. I will. I think for me, more than the designations, I think it's about the business purpose that you're solving, and it's not about this function or another function or this department or another department. If one were to look at business strategy as something that evolves, or it has consumer at the core of it, and I think that's really what I see as the task for a chief consumer officer. How do I make consumer-based business strategy and take it to the consumers?
I always thought that the Zee Group has been immensely customer-oriented And in fact, I remember when I had the good fortune of working closely with Subhashi in 1994 for 6 months, I saw that in those days of snail mail only, there used to be a massive room filled with at least 2 truckloads of postcards from viewers from across the country. Okay, even overseas airmail letters used to be there, and the response head with an army of assistants would painstakingly go over each and every one, take them, send them to different departments and content heads and all of the concerned people. So why has Zee identified the need to create the Chief Customer Officer role for its domestic broadcast business? What are the challenges and opportunities you see here?
It's interesting that you speak of that. That still happens, by the way. I think we take Log Kya Kahenge very seriously. Okay. And that team is still there. They still send, not in the snail mail fashion. I think that's a much larger input system that still exists. So there is a call-in, there are mails, and now I think more than ever the whole social listening, where you are listening to what people have to say, and we are in the business of emotions, right? So really listening to people and where their larger cultural tropes are headed is super critical for the business. It's been the cornerstone of our success always.
Wonderful.
I think it being seen as part of a function versus it as an embedded chalo shuru kare kuch bhi lekar viewer ka naam is really the place that we want to get to. And I think you've used the words consumer and customer interchangeably, and it's a good thing because we are seeing it as putting the consumer or customer first, whether it is our viewers whom we service or our customers in terms of the advertising clients that we service or the distribution partners that we service, and we're looking at putting them at the center of everything.
Okay.
Yes?
You're tuned to the Master's Voice, the podcast series of Mediabrief.com. I am your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and with me is the truly stellar professional Prathyusha Agarwal, Chief Consumer Officer, Domestic Broadcast Business of Zee. Stay tuned. In fact, Prathyusha, Puneet Mishra, CEO of the domestic broadcast business, has gone on record to say that this role stems from the company's strategy of winning in many Bharats. And Prathyusha will lead this effort by working closely with business leaders in conceptualizing and driving the new workflows, processes and systems to ensure a strong customer focus across all aspects of the business. So how will you work to achieve that objective? It's a massive objective, isn't it?
I think most big tasks, when broken down into smaller bites, are very achievable. And I think we've already been on this journey for a bit now in the last 2 years. And I think if there's one thing that I attribute all our regional success to, it is this obsession with consumer and their culture focus, and how do we get that into the craft of storytelling. So in that sense, it is a task that or a objective that we are all fairly excited about, and the business has seen evidence of success when you put consumer at the center. I think Zee has always believed in it. We've always told extraordinary stories of common people and their journeys and where they get to. And I think watching life closely and being very tuned into your viewer is intrinsic part of storytelling. And I think that's what the story is for us at Zee, and that's what we're trying to build.
And you did mention that it was both consumers, meaning the ones who consume all the Zee content and support it, and the customers who are within, including all the stakeholders, whether it's your departments here or it's the advertisers, it's the associates who work with you. So for the consumers who are external, how do you go about it? I mean, is there an omni-channel CRM that happens, or how do you look at customer relationship management?
So in storytelling entertainment, it's a little different, right? And given the background that I've come from, like BFSI or e-com, where CRM is all about transactional relationship management, and a lot of it, I mean, let me not call it just transactional, but there are a lot of transactions. Versus entertainment is a habit-driven behavior where they come to you every day. Right. And they spend 2 to 3 hours every day, and we are here to give them an extraordinary time. So in that sense, the relationship management is more like being a native storyteller rather than about, obviously we have the social CRM, ORM setups that are there, or the digital places where they reach out. but consumers are not reaching out at a transactional level to us. And hence the indexing is a lot more on being tuned in and telling their stories rather than responding to queries. I think that's where thing is. In the traditional sense on the CRM, obviously a lot of viewers and participants interact with us across talent shows, award functions. They vote, they show their love, they're participating in various contests, and we have that pool that we reach out to. But even there, we don't do the traditional, let's do email marketing communication, or let's do it is a lot more conversational CRM, where you're telling them there's a show today, or this is going to happen in the story, come watch.
Emotions driven formation of
absolutely
enforcement of the habit.
Right, absolutely.
Hooked, like
yes.
In fact, I must tell you that there is this other broadcasting conglomerate, maybe as slightly smaller than Z, which actually has, one agency that looks after connections or, calls, inquiries, etc. over 3 pipelines of content and contact. One is the telephone, the other is social media conversations where people talk and, tag the broadcaster, and the third is email calls, and this one. And in fact, in 1 year, that agency completed or resolved, so to speak, I'm not saying they were all complaints, but closed 1 million conversations like that. So yes, you're right. I mean, there are 2 parts, and if you look at it from the traditional perspective, it's, questions and answers, and hey, this is how we can help you. And the other one is reaching out to them in their favorite hangout points and everything else. So essentially, what's at the bottom of this entire thing is the mindset of consumer centricity. How do you plan to bring it up from the subconscious amongst Z employees and people to the top of their minds?
I definitely don't think it's just at a subconscious level for us. It's our daily routine. Because if I don't get inspired by people, what am I going to write on storytelling?
Correct.
We have what we call, we're fairly passionate about soul to screen is what we call it internally.
Wonderful. You're tuned to the Master's Voice, the podcast series of Mediabrief.com. I am your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and with me is the truly stellar professional, Prathyusha Agarwal, Chief Consumer Officer, Domestic Broadcast Business of Z. Stay tuned. Soul to screen.
Yeah. So if you and what is the soul that we're talking about? It's about the viewer's soul, the cultural soul. For example, if I'm telling stories in Marathi, am I completely tuned in with the Marathi Modpana? Or if I am telling a story in Bengali, then is it coming from the Bangaliana, or is there a Kannadatana in the story that I tell in Kannada? So let me break it down into how we look at it. It's fairly tangible things that my content teams, marketing teams, and everybody chases. So if you look at a story that's being told, or in a channel that's offering stories, the whole space of what are the big passion points, tropes, folklores, topical content spaces. So for example, when we launched Z Punjabi, we looked at what are the big tropes, and hence there the love stories there are a different level, the passion there is a different level, and hence a love story from there like a Heer Ranjha, or the whole, that's the space from which, and everybody knows that Mac's contribution to army is from Punjab. But then what happens to a husband-wife relationship when you are in love with him and he's in love with the country, is a emotion that you want to do. And the third part, like, people say, partition to Punjab ka hua hai, India ka nahi. It's a big emotion there. And a partition or a Sarhad Par love story is that much more meaningful, because there don't see us as they versus us, and there is a certain emotional connect that's there. So you're picking up stories which are passion points of that culture. So that's one big thing. The second thing is, how do you tell the treatment of those stories, and which is where the Punjabiyat or the Kannadatana or the Bangaliana, which I spoke about, there is a certain sthit pragna or sthirata in a Kannadiga versus a very, very jazba karwa khanada kind of passion in a Punjabi person. And hence when my story is being told also, the pace, the treatment and all of them, the way the characters are. Does the character feel like a character from my region, or does it feel like, for example, we have a story that has actually Chambarati has travelled across 4 states and it performs in every single state. And why does that happen? It is Sembarati in one, Chambarutti in another, Chambarati in another place, and it was called Muddamandaram in Telugu. Not just about the language, it's about the character herself is a slightly more outspoken girl in one culture versus a lot more subdued in another culture, and also the context in which she is. It's a class divide. It's a driver ki beti driver nahi banegi, and she goes on to break the class divide is the story, and then there is all the emotion around it. But how are you changing the cultural context and the character is a very big pillar for us. And so when I say soul to screen, these characters which are very, very connecting and also symbols of my culture. And the last part, which for us is like a really big thing and very tangible for a consumer, is the boli.
Okay.
It's not about, for us, it's culture, not language, and hence boli for us is more critical than just getting the language. So when we, if you look at any of our Marathi serials, or similarly if you go and look at the Punjabi stories that we're currently telling, or even the latest movie channel, the Zee Biscope, which we put, like it's by scope. We really bother getting the boli right? Because there is a fundamental connect that happens, and words are not just words, right? And the joke that I've now used multiple times, and I'm going to repeat one more time. If you've grown up in Mumbai, you won't find it very odd when people say, "Wo off ho gaya." So he's died, for God's sake. He's not a machine who's got switched off and is no longer useful. But that comes from a certain cultural codes that you see a human as a contributing member of the society. Ab wo off ho gaya. Versus you go to a MP or a UP, there'll be a lot more wo guzar gaye, wo shant ho gaye, which is a perspective of how the person is feeling, emotion and all of that. Versus wo Bhagwan ke pyare ho gaye. There is a the boli actually captures the emotion that the viewer connects to. So for us, these 3 pillars, so it's not just at let's be customer centric, but what does bringing that customer soul or viewer soul to screen mean? Get the cultural big tropes and the cultural passion points, and hence your story context. Then the characters which will feel are from your world and your aspirational characters.
So you empathize with them.
Yes. And I know this is a girl like me, this is a Telugu girl like me, or this is a Punjabi guy like me, is what we really index on. And finally the boli. So all these 3 in a very, very conscious form is what we drive.
Excellent. In fact, that's great content insight even for young professionals who are in the space of creating content which connects with people and brings them back again and again. You're tuned to the Master's Voice, the podcast series of Mediabrief.com. I am your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and with me is the truly stellar professional, Prathyusha Agarwal, Chief Consumer Officer, Domestic Broadcast Business of Zee. Stay tuned. Since you just spoke about boli and you spoke about, the regional aspects and how sensitivities and responses are far more better attuned and better evoked by authenticity, like you mentioned, is very important. So let's come to some of the initiatives, the business achievements recently that Zee came up with and accomplished. Regional channels were launched. 4 of them were launched a month or 2 months back. And how has that done? You also have 2 more channels launched that are being launched, and what can we expect from the House of Zee in the coming months? Let's look at the 4 channels that were launched earlier, how they've performed, and what's coming up that you can share without spoiling marketing plans.
No, so I'll talk about the ones which are done, because that's always lovely to talk about the baskets that have been dunked. Right. So I think in a year where every place that I went to, there would be conversation on downturn, kuch nahi ho raha hai, and I think Zee has always been the contrarian to the trend.
Okay.
And we saw that and there is fundamental categories in which viewer or consumption grows, right? So we were seeing viewer growth, and we were seeing consumption growing in certain languages, and this work started way before the current year's trend line. And we felt, and the 4 channels that we've launched are Zee Punjabi, Zee Biscope, Zee Tirai, which is a Tamil movie channel, and Zee Picture, which is a Kannada movie channel.
Right.
Somewhere we looked at, and it also, the thinking came from Punjab is a very, very content responsive market, and we've seen that when content is provided in your own language, the time spent doubles and triples, right? And it's quality content, not any content, and that market was showing those green shoots. And similarly for Bhojpuri, we have a channel there, Ganga, and we felt that those were ripe, and I think we had a certain journey in South, from whether it's on Zee Tamil or Zee Kannada, going to leadership, and Zee Telugu, which has always been a great performer, and Kerala launch. I think Kerala launch also triggered and kind of gave us that.
About a year back.
Yes, and that was the most successful launch. Crossing a 10 share in the first year is pretty much unheard
Amazing.
of. So I think that kind of gave us a little bit of confidence, saying maybe we are understanding the viewer right, and let's kind of extend that understanding further.
Wonderful.
So that thinking, how do we, I think one of the other things that we did very, very consciously in Kerala was let's build a habit. And both in terms of marketing and on content, let's not focus on, I think a typical entry till then would be a new channel would over-index on non-fiction, big faces, premieres, and
you all did start with really great movie titles.
We've had a very solid fiction, and I think that's what has been built, because that's the staple, right, for a habit formation, that they're coming in and day out, and spending that time with your core characters is a very then it's a long-term sustainable thing. And I think viewers have rewarded us very well, both in Kerala, and now that's gotten repeated on Punjab and Biscope. Biscope obviously opened as a number 1. The numbers are there for the team to kind of look through. And again, Zee Punjabi, that again is a very, very happy story for us internally. The teams did Bhangra on the floor for both of them. I think they've really lapped up the storytelling that's happening on Zee Punjabi. And we of course went with our crown jewels like a Sargama in both Kerala and in Punjabi, because those are the other thing I think which we really focus on is the homegrown talent, right? And we don't buy formats, and we've built a lot of these bottom up. And as Zee, we're very committed to giving the local talent a platform, and in that really becoming a big objective.
Statewide talking point.
Correct. So I think for us, it was not just about launching new channels, but also creating the creative ecosystem. So for example, Punjab, there is a lot of talent there. How do we create the ecosystem there, which can then kind of give them a platform? Or similarly in Bhojpuri and Bihar, and there is enough, Bhojpuri movie market that's there. And how do we further the cause of aiding the creative ecosystem?
And you also integrate this very beautifully, this well-found talent, good talent, with the Zee music label. It supports them across.
Yes, it does. I think that's why we call ourselves Extraordinary Together.
Wonderful.
We work very closely in whether it's Zee Studios, Zee Marathi, and Zee Music, or TV channels with studio label and the studios. I think we enjoy coming together and making things big.
And not only create great value for those youngsters and the talent, but also for the company and its group.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And the other 2 channels, so what are you going to focus on?
I didn't speak about Tirai and Picture. Yes, obviously that's like so South movies, is it's a passion, it's a religion, it's a different level. So we've had a fantastic time putting them together, and they've just been launched, so the numbers are not something which I can reveal.
Very early days, of course.
But I think the traction that we're seeing, and we have campaigns rolling on both Zee Terai, which is about Rakta Tilakalanda, the cinema, which is literally cinema is the blood in my veins, which is the religion that it is there, and the campaign that we put together for Zee Terai, we're all very excited about, which captures that spirit of how the heroic spirit in Tamil cinema is actually a reflection of Tamil people. So I think that's really what's getting captured in Thirai. And Zee Picture, we call it the hit dinner feeling, which again is about what's the kind of feeling that you want from movies. And so that's the brand promise there. So really betting on these two, also adding to the South pie that we're... so overall, if the network share is at a 19, South is a little under-indexed because we weren't present in the movie category across all 4 South states. So that's what we've kind of filled with these new ones coming. Yeah.
And just as Zee Keralam leapt into and seized the collective imagination in just about a year, I'm sure you'll do that quicker with these.
Yes, inshallah.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. You're tuned to the Master's Voice, the podcast series of Mediabrief.com. I am your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and with me is the truly stellar professional, Prathyusha Agarwal, Chief Consumer Officer, Domestic Broadcast Business of Zee. Stay tuned. The media and entertainment industry has been witnessing a lot of women leaders emerging, and helming key projects. So, how do you promote? And Zee has been championing the cause of women, of course, through its emotional stories of women characters who beat their circumstances, who rise, and who are an inspiration to their neighborhoods set inside the stories and the people who view them. So, what is Zee doing to bring about more empowerment of women? I don't think they need empowering. I think women are always the stronger gender, and they are truly amazing, as workmates, as professionals, and as family leaders and the basis of everything that happens in India. But what is Zee doing, as one of the most respected women leaders in the entire business? And that's why we are talking to you on Women's Day. So what are you all doing as far as women empowerment is concerned, and inclusivity, diversity? So
I actually at this point of time will use a phrase that Animesh, our Chief People Officer, does, and that was really nice, and that made me feel very nice, saying we are a gender blind or gender neutral organization.
Wonderful.
We don't look at it as women leaders and men leaders and women employees and men employees, and so I think when you take the gender out of it, ultimately people want a better life. Everybody is looking for an emotional fill, whether it is men or women. They're looking for an emotional woman, and especially I love the way you use the word family leaders. If women are the family leader, which they usually end up being, with the rest of the people being project members, I think they're really wanting a better life for their entire family, and I think that's what connects in our stories, because collectively India today and the mini Bharats are no longer caught up in the old thing, this is my destiny. You see it in pop culture, you see it in movies like Gully Boy. It's not saying meri to naseeb ye hai, and I'm going to live with my reality, versus I'm going to make my reality towards the dreams, right? So, and they're very consciously, actively working towards it. So that's the power of storytelling that we're bringing. Yes, they all happen to be women protagonists, mostly women protagonists, but I think we're not looking at it as and I genuinely, as a woman, think it's very preachy to tell women ko empowerment chahiye, women ko kaun hote ho yaar tum karne wale. It's I think everybody plays a role, and I think the more yes, there is need for being sensitive to the biases and doing stuff, and which I think Zee does a fabulous job of. But I think removing these glasses, I think by acknowledging and repeating those stereotypes, we are propagating them further, versus when you make a gender blind organization, you're propagating no stereotypes. You're saying, what does this task need? There are some tasks which need left and right brain thinking. There are some tasks which are completely creative. There are some tasks which are a mix of everything, and you're looking for the right person who does that without the bias of gender. I don't think it's about saying, oh, creative hai to zyada, let's take more women, or if it's another function, let's take. I don't think it comes from that place, which is what I'm really proud of Z for that they're very consciously driving a gender neutral or gender blind organization.
You're tuned to the Master's Voice, the podcast series of Mediabrief.com. I am your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and with me is the truly stellar professional, Prathyusha Agarwal, Chief Consumer Officer, Domestic Broadcast Business of Z. Stay tuned. I'm shifting gears to another topic. I recently read a tiny little survey that was pushed out by an organization, I won't name them, but it was about 1,000 samples strong, which became a survey which everybody's, I think, and I dare say use that word very consciously, blindly repeating and probably giving credence to. It says that because of the NTO2, don't comment on the NTO2, but because of this, a lot of viewers are now catching their television or video viewing content not on linear televisions but on OTT platforms. If you look at Bark India itself, which says that out of 197 million TV homes, only 7% of those homes actually consume television content on their OTT platforms. So, is it right to, jump the bandwagon like everybody else seems to be doing and say that, digital is catching up, it's going to overtake television? What is your view on this entire knee-jerk kind of reactions that people have? What is your view?
So I think the world is today, it's not just about one TV versus digital conversation. I think the world has gone on to this bandwagon of othering. It is this or that. And everything seems to be seen in binaries, which world and life never is. It's like saying, "Arey chips bahut kha rahe hain log, to abhi khana nahi khayenge." We all love food, we'll eat food, and the more the merrier. Think of the amount of cuisines that you're eating today versus what you ate when you were a kid or 20 years back in India itself. I think this is the best of the times for content in this country and in the world. I only see it growing further, and we see it as an and world. And just to give a sense of numbers, 836 million people on TV. All digital consumption putting together will not even be 1/10 of that. So, exactly. And I'm talking about video consumption right now, not overall presence on digital. And it's not to say that digital video consumption won't happen. We are seeing it ourselves, right? We see ourselves as a content company. Our content is being consumed on TV, it's being consumed on an OTT platform, it's being consumed on social platforms, it's everywhere. So the devices will be many, and I think the trick is in us as content makers or storytellers figuring out, or let me actually pull it one step forward, not just content and storytellers, but entertainers and people who we think of ourselves as, we're in the category of giving people an extraordinary time.
Right.
Okay, whether that time is made extraordinary by you sitting in front of the TV and watching it for 3 hours or 13 hours binge watching on Z5, I'm okay, I'm happy, do that. Or if you want to engage with me for 3 minutes on a social platform, by all means, I'm here to give you an extraordinary time. You choose the platform, and yes, you choose the platform, and I'm there. And I think the binary thing is chosen because it's like all media. And sorry, I don't mean we are all part of the same media. You just want to make something dhamakedar, and when you pit one versus the other, it is
ridiculous. I think it has to be device agnostic, platform agnostic.
Correct. And I think gone is the world of one versus the other. It is a lot of things come together to make extraordinary time happen.
Wonderful. Very well said. Very well said. You're tuned to the Master's Voice, the podcast series of Mediabrief.com. I am your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and with me is the truly stellar professional, Prathyusha Agarwal, Chief Consumer Officer, Domestic Broadcast Business of Z. Stay tuned. The world is moving towards, data and AI and machine learning and all of that. So how is that entire not just mindset, but the processes and the enablers,
Sure.
all of those, how are they being incorporated in the way of life, whether it's processes or it's thinking or use of these at Z?
So we have a data host pipe in terms of the bark ratings that come every Thursday. So there is actual behavioral data that's there, and people talk and comment a lot on entertainment.
Right.
It's not like, with all due respect on the categories that I've worked on, people don't want to sit and talk about shampoo. Like people talk about stories, entertainment. So there is a data host pipe for us in the social digital world and actual behavioral data, and we have really one is customer centricity, the other is being factful. Are you just making your decisions by gut? And that again used to be a big thing in content, right? So versus being factful and looking at facts from multiple platforms, whether it's your syndicated sources or it's direct consumer contact or your social listening. We've done a bunch of modeling work. So I could classify that modeling work on behavioral modeling on how viewers of a channel behave on TV, within a channel, across channels, or during day parts, and that's really helping us optimize or maximize every slot that they spend with us, and how do I move people around. There's a bunch of analytical modeling work happening on understanding what works in content, using multiple sources and saying, okay, what really gets people going. And there's of course the whole marketing modeling part of it, saying what are they responding to, which media is working. So I think
there's a correlation with real-time spikes.
Yes. You thankfully in this category, it's much better than any other category. You do have not the real time, but fairly real time. And I think with our own OTT platforms and social data, we're pretty much getting the real time data in that sense. It's not as great as e-commerce, but I think it's almost there. And for us, analytics and being factful is another big pillar.
You're tuned to the Master's Voice, the podcast series of Mediabrief.com. I am your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and with me is the truly stellar professional, Prathyusha Agarwal, Chief Consumer Officer, Domestic Broadcast Business of Z. Stay tuned. Prathyusha, one of the most memorable things that Z has done in the relatively recent past, taken the positioning of extraordinary together. Z has always, I've seen it as an entity, as a corporate which has been very responsive to, responsible towards, and emotionally invested in India, its viewers, Indians, and of course, everyone who is consuming their content. So I think the Bharatiyapan of unity, togetherness, of inclusiveness, inclusivity, diversity is really beautifully iterated in the extraordinary together positioning. Now, rolling this out, not just to external stakeholders and the world outside, the consumers, but also the stakeholders who are internal and allied on the B2B space, the entire social and business ecosystem of the places and the footprints of Z, its presence must have been a mammoth task because you are such a large conglomerate. How much time did it take to start rolling this out? I know it has to ultimately be the press of one button and it goes out everywhere nicely, but it must have been a phenomenal task, and it's a great achievement for you and the team that you worked with. Because I just love the extraordinary together baseline and the colors, the splash. It just grows on you all the time. So tell me about that experience. How was it rolling this out? It's a great positioning shift case study.
Sure. I think it took an extraordinary team to come together and make it happen, and some of them are like here, which it was a big task. Like you rightly said, there were 75 channels. Wow. Across countries, and that's just talking about the physical changeover, right? There was, I think, if you look at the logo representation, there's a physical, human, digital angle to it. To get that changeover, that's the last. Let me not call the last. That's one milestone. But I think what exactly do we mean by extraordinary together for various stakeholders, and that was the bigger journey for me personally to kind of understand and it was not really a change in that sense because Z's always believed in that togetherness philosophy. Even when we did a Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, it is that sense of us coming together, right? So for us, this was another leap from there. And I think if we are here in this category to give people an extraordinary time, and how does that happen when you put very diverse things together, we create the extraordinary. I think that's really where it came from. And it took us an internal journey of meeting all the people across businesses, our partners, our stakeholders, and saying what is really the purpose for which we want to exist. If for the viewers it is we want to give them an extraordinary time, we do that by coming together. And also the larger emotional benefit of togetherness and belonging. I think that's a really big thing for us, both internally at Z and I think for us as a nation, Bharat. We are a very harmonious, belonging-seeking people as a nation. And I think as storytellers, we really needed to capture that bit. And I think that's where Extraordinary Together came from. I think for us, that was really a start point. It was not a end point. The 75 channels switching on one night was a feat, but a whole team came together, and it's amazing how in Z people come together to make stuff happen. So it was a team of, I think, 35 to 40 people who used to meet every other week planning all the stuff that needed to be done to the T, and it was literally the Om Namaha equivalent for us as an organization when we said, okay, we want to be the M&E powerhouse and we want to, I think the business made that transition because business was across Z Studios, music label, Z5, and the TV business of course was thriving with multiple channels across the region. So we said, how do we bring that story alive and how do we take that journey to all our channels? So in fact, if you remember, at that time is when we did even the ZTV Aaj Likhenge Kal, which was about capturing, if your master brand is making the promise of extraordinary together, then how does that promise go to the viewer in your GEC channels? How does it go into your movie channels like the Cinema that's happened on Z Cinema, which then goes into a whole bunch of cinema channels and so on and so forth. To the latest Z Punjabi saying Jazba Karo Akhanda, there is a certain, just like how I've said in the Soul to Screen, there is a theory of characters, culture and Boli. I think in building this brand, the stuff that we've really built on, and I think a little bit of tinkering has happened over the period, but being very true to the purpose and what is that lighthouse purpose that this channel exists for. I think the teams today first ask, it's not, a brand is not just about a promise, it's about that great promise kept. And how will I as marketing, content, everybody in the team understand why do I exist and what purpose am I solving in this particular region with this particular channel? Translating that into the characters who are then the face of it. For us, we are blessed with the fact that our characters are pretty much celebrities that endorse you day in and day out, right? People love them, people come to them as influencers every night. And then the last part, which I think it's really underrated and not talked about a lot, it's the channel UI. I think people think of UI UX as a digital concept, but if a person needs to spend 3 to 4 hours every day with you, you bloody well have a good interface design. I think the entire and not just on the channel but moving them between digital to TV to, they need to recognize you as one Z. Okay, it's like why do we all love Apple? Because it doesn't matter, you have an iPod, you have an iPad, or you have a phone, everything, there is some core design essentials which you connect with, and you, that promise, you know that, oh, I'm going to get this promise from this brand because it's delivered across the products. And I think that design sensibility and the design aesthetics is something which we are taking, and it's not just in terms of the visual part of it. There is a whole bunch of culture semiotics that go into it. The togetherness is done with the circular form. So we are a world of circles which you'll see everywhere.
Correct.
And the extraordinary energy, the exuberance, which is the color splash that you spoke about. So the togetherness circle, which is at the center of every channel ident or every channel closure that you see, you'll get back to that at the center. And that world goes into a digital expression everywhere. And if you were to get into a culture, when you go into a Punjabi that exuberance is done in the form of a gold splash. You're taking culture, you take the patterns, but you're taking the cultural nuances and bringing it to the core of extraordinary, the together circles and the extraordinary exuberance in each of those. And I think that's really been the journey. And similarly, when you take it to a cinema category, the spotlight, and so you're using a lot of design fundamentals to say how do I keep the person who comes in the evening on the channel coming back on the morning, coming later over the week, and that takes a fair amount of science. And I think that channel design is something that we've really obsessed over in the Extraordinary Together exercise. So on the outside you would see it's usually channel refreshes are seen as communication exercises, but I think we've put inordinate amount of time on the character building and the design, UI, UX.
To seamlessly connect with.
Yes.
And represent the personality of Z.
Absolutely.
And in fact, I just love the circle that you mentioned. Within it is the Z, the 3 letters, simply put. And the second E of Z is actually like an outlet from the universe, and the energy goes out in the splash. So how much time do you think it took? This is a bit of trivia that I really want. From the first day that, Subhashji or Puneet and you sat down and said, we need to do this, until really pressing the button and saying, yes, we've achieved it.
So,
even a guesstimate.
Yeah, no, I know it exactly because I index my PPTs with the day on which that's made. So we started this in March 2017 and we landed it on October 2nd. Thanks to this boy here, we did it as first an internal reveal to all the employees and then to the external world on October 17th, I think. So I think that was 6 months.
So the boy here that you mentioned is one of the best Copcom people I have seen, Parag Darade, and I must say thank you to him and his team.
Pavan, the 3-year journey, a lot of it wouldn't have been possible without Parag, and the calm composure that he brings to the table is amazing. Yeah.
Truly. You're tuned to the Master's Voice, the podcast series of Mediabrief.com. I am your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and with me is the truly stellar professional, Prathyusha Agarwal, Chief Consumer Officer, Domestic Broadcast Business of Z. Stay tuned. You spoke about data, but when you look at data, the most important piece of data that enables marketers is the cookies. And I see and I believe that it is really going to happen. There's going to be a demise of third-party cookies-based marketing, and marketers who keep track of their customers, their consumers rather, at every stage of the way, move from television to social to the OTT platform Z5. We're talking about the DTH kind of reception and service of Dish. Now third-party cookies are going to go, right? And I think Apple threw the spanner first in the works for privacy when Safari said, no, we will not allow you to give or share it unless you are aware of what is happening, and then you want to go and do it, you do it. It's up to you. So this is not about Apple, but this is about the fact that across the board, and now Google also has been sort of, pressured into, I think, by this ecosystem to agree that they will try and restrict, and actually restrict after maybe a year and a half, access to third-party cookies. So what's going to happen? I mean, is it now purely going to be let's get the opted-in people? And you have such a long history of connections with viewers, consumers, customers. So you would have a massive first-party opted-in data also. But how is it going to, what are the implications for marketers with third-party cookies access being sort of taken away in some time?
Sure. I think let's put the context of where third-party cookies are useful, right? If I look at marketing and saying there is the entire value chain, right? I think direct contact with the viewer or consumer and understanding them, I don't think there's any substitute for that, and we've always done it and people will continue to do it. Where the third-party cookie data was really useful for a lot of us is building a certain user persona, saying, okay, this person has a certain repertoire like this and does A, B, C, D, E. And also you're focusing on, let's say, the micro, and this person and people like him or people like her do this. As long as we are able to get trend level data and I think I value privacy a lot, and I think as long as we're able to understand broad trends, marketers will be okay. I think marketers as a breed evolve and are always on the edge of trying to figure out the next new thing. Sure. And I think we'll figure out a way to deal with this too. I think going back to the marketing value chain construct, where I have to track you and get you to do a transaction, it will matter a lot, versus where I need to drive habit with you. I first need to be in your head and in your heart. There, do I know you and do I go behind you on cookies might not matter as much. Yes, I would love to know which of my viewer from Bareilly is on Facebook and then came to Z5 and then went to my TV. I would love to know, but I think we'll manage.
You're tuned to the Master's Voice, the podcast series of Mediabrief.com. I am your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and with me is the truly stellar professional, Prathyusha Agarwal, Chief Consumer Officer, Domestic Broadcast Business of Z. Stay tuned. Prathyusha, last question.
So I'm sorry, I have a nervous tick, I think, with my phone.
So, somebody comes to you, second last, sorry, but very short ones, okay? When somebody comes to you and says, Prathyusha ma'am, I'd like to work with you. What are the, values, skill sets, attitudes, etc., etc.? What is it that you feel and believe that the person must have, the absence of which could be a deal breaker for you?
Sure. For me, integrity and humility are like deal breakers. I mean, I'm okay with
absence of.
Yeah, absence of. Yeah, that. The absence of that would be real deal breakers, because I've seen if you do not have professional integrity and the humility to learn, okay, both of them are super critical. Humility reflects in the way you are willing to listen, have an open mind, not get caught in your own success formulae, structures, all of that. And I think that's I've seen over a period of time that people who have that end up learning more and are better learners. So that for me is an absolute deal breaker.
They also inspire a lot of confidence, don't they, in their bosses like you?
Listen, many a times they might come across as very calm people also. Yeah, there are people who have a certain flair and orators, and then there are people who would be quiet, but they're they're learners, right? So I think the ones with humility and integrity are supremely dependable and hence inspire a lot of confidence. But I think many a times we underestimate people who don't have the loudest voice in the group, or people who are not there are certain prototypes and archetypes that have been celebrated as leaders, okay, versus I think in the world that's to come and where we are almost there at, people who have the ability to unlearn and learn, and that humility to say I don't know will be a big plus, versus I know everything and I'm going to kill it.
Really very insightful advice, Prathyusha. You're tuned to the Master's Voice, the podcast series of Mediabrief.com. I am your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and with me is the truly stellar professional, Prathyusha Agarwal, Chief Consumer Officer, Domestic Broadcast Business of Z. Stay tuned. You have described yourself as a stay-at-work mom, which just tells us of your complete commitment to your work and to the entire team that's dependent upon you at work. Another thing that you mentioned in your Twitter profile, I really like that. Folks, you must go and check out Prathyusha's Twitter profile. Prathyusha, will you just spell out where it is so that people can go and, connect with you there if they want to?
It's at Prathyusha Lee. It's Prathyusha Lee, Ly.
So you mentioned over there that you're also a John Galt line addict.
Okay. So I think the world moves forward when somebody decides to change the status quo, or basically saying this what's possible in our imagination, or what's possible on human capability. And for me, John Galt line in that particular project, and if you've read the book, you know the context of the John Galt line, where everybody said this is impossible, it can't happen, and some brilliant people come together and make it happen. For me, the John Galt line is as much about Red and Steel, the people who work with Dagny, as much as it is about Dagny or John Galt, who says anything is possible. And so I guess that's a bit of a driving life philosophy for me. Wow. So if we don't have John Galt lines, I guess I personally feel like I am stagnating.
Thank you ever so much, Prathyusha, for your time. And tell me, what did you think about this interview and the interaction?
Thank you, Pavan. It was quite lovely, and thanks to Mediabrief for taking this initiative. I think you got out the person in me, which I think is quite nice, and I think it's always nice to know the human side of people, which is what I enjoyed a lot in this whole exercise. Thank you so much, Pavan.
You're most welcome, Prathyusha. Thank you ever so much. That was Prathyusha Agarwal, Chief Consumer Officer, Domestic Broadcast Business at Zee. Truly stellar professional. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this and it was an insightful chat for you as much as it was for me. I love bringing it to you. Till the next time, this is Pavan Chawla, your host and friend from Mediabrief.com, from the Master's Voice podcast series. Till we meet again, bye-bye.